Well then, let's take a look at our game. This is fine. Just as fine as my patrons. Support creators on Patreon, link down below. So, you just started the game. A few years into it, you realize nothing works and the economy resembles the country of Greece. Well, where did you go wrong? Did you go wrong? And more importantly, can you salvage and fix this? How can you keep your economy from crashing? Well, today we'll learn. Hopefully. So, like in any game, you start it and you set out your ships to explore, then construction ships afterwards to expand the borders. Well, typical things. Here, I don't think there's a player out there that would not order their construction ships to also build resource collecting stations on those systems. However, it better be said than left unsaid. There is no reason not to build resource stations. Build them! Come on, they are the foundation of your economy. Now, with expansion you may find that there are worlds to colonize. Well, colonies do impose certain economical issues, but soon after they pay for themselves, and only long-lasting annoyance from too many planets and pops may come in the form of administrative capacity. All that the Empire Sprawl does is really cost technologies, campaigns, edicts and crap like that. Mostly stuff that you don't care too much about as a newbie, or even someone like me who has played for a while. And seriously, to this day, really just ignore it till the moment I really don't have anything better to do. So, my recommendation, ignore it like the parking fines. Though I gotta mention that, yeah, sure, there are some campaigns that are useful, however, they are unlocked through technology, so that's more of a mid to late game rather than early game, which most people struggle with when it comes to economy balancing. Okay, well, so here we go with more common newbie mistakes that screw the economy harder than what Hollywood does to child actors. In usual strategy games, my first instinct is to use the leftover materials and resources to keep building military forces. In Stellaris, however, it's a very bad idea. Seriously, the less military you have, the better. In fact, building ships just before the war or right after it started might be a smarter move, at least at the start. See, the upkeep of these ships is often the reason why you see wild swings in your energy credits, and the reason why after a brutal war, your economy is booming. It's due to the lack of ships you need to upkeep, obviously. Now, okay, let's say you still want army ships and whatnot else. Fine, okay. Well, at that point, at least make sure that every big army ship and even the farting Billy in the space is docked. If you keep your big military ships in random space just in case, well, too bad, they will consume far more resources and thus the upkeep will ruin you. So dock your ships. Now let's say you have the big army, well, now what? What do you do then? Well, usually, if you need to reduce the ship upkeep list, suicide them into aliens. You know, those random little hostile alien things, pirates, space amoebas, you know, things like those. Send in your ships and get some of them killed. Best that can happen is they win and you get a free system cleared with some resources and tech. Or worst, you lose all the ships and reduce the power of the alien bunch. Well, either way, it's a win-win. Okay, but what if there are no aliens left? Well, it's time for war then. If you wish to reset your economy, a good way to do so, like in real life, I shit you not, is to start a war. Seriously, read some history. Wars often are started due to some economical reasons. And finally, if the wars are not your thing, as if you're some sort of fart-sniffing, lily-liver, limp-wristed, yellow-bellied pacifist or something, fine. Dismiss your ships. You get no resources back, but at least the upkeep of those ships won't butcher your wallet anymore. Additionally, dismissing unneeded construction ships too might be a good idea, but don't expect much. Also, deconstructing unneeded captured or otherwise stations that you don't need is also a great idea. In fact, it's necessary when you conquer an enemy and their shitty little starports. But all that is mitigating bad economy. All of that is treating the symptoms, not the real problem. Well, basically what front-end developments do with all their games. Like treating a landmine's victim's wounds with child bandages. No, now we're gonna get to the real reason your economy is in the gutter. The planets! First, speaking from experience, the problem I had when they changed the planets and how pops worked is you shouldn't build as much as possible. See, back in the day in Stellaris, planets simply had some buildings you could create and it would automatically produce resources. Now you have to balance unemployment pops against the available jobs. These days, pop migration is handled by EA a bit more, which is a godsend, frankly. But even so, your goal is to make sure that there are barely any free jobs available and no unemployed pops. That is the perfect situation. On top, making sure that housing for those pops is plentiful only helps. There is no penalty for having too much housing. In fact, it increases migration pool. So, as long as you have housing, pick one of those districts that generates a resource instead that, you're missing from your economy. When you need the pop housing, on the other hand, city districts or luxury residences are for you. Though I would rather reserve those building slots for something special instead. So, with this balancing act on one planet, you can extend it to others. It takes a while to get used to it, but damn it, the dick update made it easier when all you need to look at anymore is basically to see just if you have any unemployed pops anymore. Man, I remember back in the day when playing Devouring Swarms as I take over planets and boom, my economy is in the shitter due to 20 plus available jobs, forcing me to constantly destroy structures of the planets just to get things working right, and that was a consistent endgame state for me. Micromanage the planets, woo! Speaking of, if you have built too many buildings, yes, you can disable them and that should be your first option to take, but not always you can do that, and so destroying, deconstructing those buildings should always be an option in your mind. Because after all, the more jobs you have, the worse economy will get, to simply put. And then we come to the last resort, markets and allies. When you have surplus of any of the resources, there's nothing left but to sell it off. Setting monthly selling is an option, sure, however, you're not watching this because you have surplus, right? I'll then assume economy is dying. Well, selling off your resources should not be your first instinct to fix it. It's like asking the plumber, well, why did you chop off your arm to plug a hole? Sure, it works short term, but then you can't masturbate anymore. Anyways. Markets, in my opinion, are good for buying resources you might need quickly to fill a small hole, like start building a district or a ship rather than have it be a permanent solution. And the same goes with your allies. You can ask them for economical help, and yes, it could pan out quite well. But usually I play to kill everything and everyone, so, well, usually I don't have any allies, yeah. But in case you do, the AI allies are really easy to predict what they are, well, in need of and what they can give you, and whether or not they are willing to give you. However, friends, well, actual people, well, I'll leave that up to the basement knife fights to resolve. So there you go, generally all that you need to look at and watch out for. Still, if you take one lesson out of this, then it'd be that in the current dick system, you need to make sure that you have as few available jobs as possible. That is 1 to 3, and that's okay. And no unemployed pops on your planets. That's the main goal, and that should solve all your economy issues. Unless, of course, you pump bazillions of military ships, of course. But regardless, if you enjoyed the video, of course, do subscribe and all that wonderful stuff. Of course, best of all, do support the content I make here on YouTube's on Patreon, basically. The link in the description, it really does help out. But as for now, I'll go check out other Stellaris videos that I've done, like the last one about the best empire and how to have the best start, generally speaking. Made a kind of a mistake there about the whole ring worlds, but Ringworld's still viable, right? And it really still does quite well with machines. So there you go.